Andy Morgan, welcome to the TLP podcast.
Thank you for finally having me on. What podcast number is this, Sam?
I believe when it comes out, it'll be episode number 63.
63. So to those listening, and thank you for tuning in, remember, I am the 63rd most relevant person to your life who happens to live in Tokyo. So you should probably switch off now. Isn't that the way to conclude this one, Sam?
Well, there's a lot of people I've invited that haven't come on, so I'm not sure if you should crank yourself that hard.
So actually, yeah, so 200 or something. I see. Yeah.
Now, having said that, if people have listened in the past and have thought, well, Sam's audio sounds really good on these shows, he must have had some really good advice in terms of the microphone, branding, and that sort of thing. Of course, Andy, being an experienced podcast host himself, was the first person I sort of reached out to when I decided to start a podcast, apart from, the weekend times I get to hang out with Joe Rogan on my trips over to the States. But yes, and I'm still using that same microphone. I can see that you've actually upgraded your setup, which is maybe one of the reasons why your audio sounds amazing today.
Thank you, sir. It's about the I aim for juicy. That's the adjective I was going for, but you can maybe put that in a little bit later in the podcast. And then it's all about the closeness of the mic to the mouth, but it is a slightly upgraded setup. Yeah, just because this last year, it's more and more Zoom calls, more and more recorded content, and I just wanted to create like a more professional, So I just decided to go all in. I'm just a bit of a tech gadget geek, and if there's any excuse for me to spend a little bit of cash on my gadgets, I will do. So I'm an idiot.
I think I've mentioned this on the podcast before, but I think I listened to a podcast about podcasts, and I've been thinking about it for a while. And it's like, I should do this. So I gave Andy a call and then told my wife. And then like 2 days later, she walks into our storeroom, and then there's the big sort of boom hanging down with the mic, and then the cover over the top. And it's just, what have you done? It's typical me. I sort of really throw myself into these things.
Have you ever read the book Dale Carnegie's How to Influence and Influence People?
Yes.
So in there, what it said is because it was written in, I think, the 1930s or 40s or something, right? What it said in there is you need to join people's email lists, and you need to reply to every email that they send as if they're your best friend and slag them off for every mistake that they make.
Yeah.
And that is how you will make friends and influence people. But that's what I do. And then that's also what I do with my friends in person, and I consider you a friend as well as my physio, because I feel that is what either cements bonds or breaks them. And if someone's going to be a little upset about like feedback on how they can improve, then they're probably not my kind of person. The relationship will explode at any point anyway. But I've made some really great friends that way, like James Clear, who wrote Atomic Habits, like loads of people. It's just, So what do I want to say here, Sam? Don't consider yourself special that I gave you some advice. I think that's what I want to say.
I think that's a fantastic note to end on. So thanks very much for coming on.
It was really good. I appreciate your time, Sam.
No, listen, you've got an amazing story, how you started off in Japan and how you built up to having a successful online fitness business. Perhaps we start at the start. I mean, did you grow up being interested in fitness? What's your sort of athletic background? And then how did you sort of make the move to Japan? What brought you out here?
So just a very quick introduction to the businesses. There's two businesses, one's English, one's Japanese. The main thing that we sell is coaching. That's one-on-one coaching over email, nutrition and training. It's for people who are frustrated with their physique progress. For the Japanese website, I say website because our client capture is mainly through our website and the articles that we write. My head coach, Naoto, has kind of carved out a really successful niche there in coaching bodybuilding clients. So we had this one client win just 3 weeks ago for the big Tokyo competition. Just this weekend gone, we had another client win the Kansai competition. He got a double crown, so really happy with that and excited for the nationals. So that's those are the two businesses. It's effectively two blogs, posh blogs, and I've written some books. People like my writing. those have turned into some books over the years. So I make a little bit. The businesses make a little bit of money from that. But yeah, mainly it's online coaching, which I'm sure that people listening to this podcast have now seen because it's ubiquitous, particularly on Instagram. I've been doing that for 11 years now, and I've been in Japan coming up to 17.
Wow,
So,
wow. Yeah, more to me actually.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, what brought you out to Japan in the first place?
So I was into karate. I was into karate because when I was 15, I was attacked in the street just kind of randomly by this gang of kids, got a bottle around the head, ran away, but left my friends there. So I was very kind of embarrassed and ashamed about my behavior there. And that was all I was thinking about actually when I was in the hospital later that day getting stitched up. I was you're just very ashamed of that. And fortunately, my friends were fine. And I got into karate. It was a suggestion from my piano teacher at the time. And then I got into training, lifting. I didn't know what I was doing at all, but someone pointed out that, you know, at 6'2" and 68 kilos, so like about 145 pounds, probably your best thing that you could do right now is not look like so much of a target.
Yeah.
And so, you know, try and put on some weight, right? Because I was very underweight. It's because I wasn't eating enough, frankly, and I didn't have a training stimulus.
Yeah.
So I did that. And then I continued the karate. I got out of it for my first 2 years of university. But then by my third, I was back into it again. And then when it came up to graduation, I didn't know what I wanted to do. All I knew was that I really enjoyed traveling from my 3 years of volunteer work in India after my first summer, my university's first summer vacation, 3 months in Calcutta. Then after my second year of university, I did 3 months traveling around Southeast Asia. That was purely selfish reasons, that one. But I loved traveling. I knew I loved traveling. I knew that Asia generally was of interest. And karate was a hobby. So when it came up to graduating in my third year, I thought, well, hey, why not go to Japan and do some karate there for a year? I just read a book called Angry White Pajamas by a guy called Robert Twigger, which I know you're familiar with that book. Really interesting book of a guy who was teaching English in Tokyo. He gets into Aikido. He decides to take something called The Course, which was a brutal 18-month-long Aikido course, which as a foreigner, it holds no benefit to him other than just a personal test. Yeah. But if you're Japanese and you want to be a riot policeman, so those guys with the sticks that you see outside of the embassies, they're all very, very well trained. They have to go through and survive a course from one of a few different designated dojos around the country. This was one of those courses that they had to survive in order to proceed to their next stage of their application to become a riot cop. Anyway, he decided to do it for fun. I read that book. It was a book swap, actually, that someone did for me in Bali. So I'm reading this on the plane back to the UK. And I was reading this and I was like, this is bloody brilliant. And then I went straight back into my final year of uni and my friends, you know, Tom, JJ, they're all signing up for PricewaterhouseCoopers and whatever, because I did an accounting degree, an economics and finance degree. And I knew that that's what I was supposed to do. But I just couldn't blag my way through the application. I couldn't fake my way through the application. Because the question, why do you want to come work for us? And it's like, well, what do you mean? Like, I'm supposed to? What do you mean? Why do I want to be an accountant? I don't want to be an accountant. Don't be silly. I just need a job. Come on, give me a job, right? And I just couldn't fake it. So I closed down the application and I just thought, you know what? Let me go to Japan. I'll be there for a year. I'll do some karate. I will teach English and I'll figure my life out. And I never did. I ended up staying. Yeah. And it's coming on to 17 years now.
But you have sort of figured your life out.
To an extent.
So you were originally in Osaka?
Yeah, I was there for 11 years there. And then the last coming up to 6 in Tokyo.
Yeah. Yep. Wow.
And in my first 6 years, I was teaching, 6.5 years, I was teaching English. The first 6 months of that was through Nova, which was a private language school. I think it's just been resurrected. And then I switched over to working at high schools. First was through an intermediate company called ECC, and then I managed to get a direct contract with the Osaka Board of Education. So I was the assistant language teacher. That gave me a lot of time because you only have a set number of classes a week, and as long as you're prepared, the rest of your time is generally to yourself. So during that time, I taught myself Japanese. And yeah, I had great times, good memories while teaching English. Yeah.
Yeah. And you got to a decent level in Japanese. I like the story how you decided that you were going to learn all the kanji.
Yeah, sure. So there's basically a bit of peer pressure, a bit of financial pressure, and just my best friend saying, "You can't do that." So it was 2009, I think. It was going to be the start of my 4th year, but I couldn't speak Japanese. I could order a beer, get around in a taxi, whatever. But I just decided that every year I've put off the serious study of Japanese because I've said to myself, "Oh, I'm going home. I'm going home next year. I'm going home next year." Right. And then I decided, you know what, like this is not an excuse anymore. Like if I go home and I can't speak the language, I'm going to be embarrassed. Now, would I be questioned about this? Would this ever come up? Probably very rarely. This is like a story that I made in my head that arguably isn't true, but I used it to motivate myself. And I had read of people learning all of the kanji, the 2046 Joyo kanji, regularly used kanji, which I think is now 2096, learning them all in 3 months. Now, this is how to write those kanji. Based on one English word. You wouldn't know how to read them. That would come after. But by using this one guy called Heisig, Robert Heisig, I think it was. I might be wrong about Robert there, but Heisig, Heisig.
Yeah.
You could use his system and learn all of the kanji if you applied yourself and had a creative mind within 3 months. And I told my friend Keith about that, and he said, "No, you can't." And I was like, "Yes, I can." And then he brought it up when we were in a bar taking a piss out of me, and then and basically turned it into a bet. And the bet was, right, then we're going to sit down here on April 1st, which would have been 3 months later. It ended up being April 4th. Austin, who was our American friend who was properly fluent, he was going to choose 10 kanji out of those 2,000 odd. And I would have to write 8 out of 10 of those perfectly. And obviously he's going to choose the hard ones. And if I got that wrong, then I'd have to buy the whole bar shots. Now, for an English teaching salary, that was going to ruin me for the month. And also I didn't want the shame. And I wanted it to spur me on. And so I committed to doing it. And I learned 23 kanji a day, I think it was. And memorized them, did my reviews, and it worked. I got the first one wrong, which was Tsubasa Wing, and much to the delight of the whole bar, who were all drumming their tables and lining up the shots. But I got the next 9 correctly, much to their dismay. And then I went on from there, and I started watching TV. I went through some grammar books and stole sentences or phrases that I thought I could use. Memorized those, then went to TV, again stole 20 phrases a day, kept it at a cadence of 20 a day that I thought I could use. And then I picked up my first novel in August. And that was just going into the local bookstore, Kinokuniya, looking at the top 10, asking the member of staff there, what is like a murder mystery author? And she grabbed this one book from this guy called Higashino Keigo and said, "Oh, this guy's famous. You'll enjoy that." And it was really hard at first because there's a lot of words in there that are names.
Yeah.
That I didn't realize are names. I think they're words that I just missed in my study.
Right.
So, and there's no like camera recognition on there,
of course,
that there is now. So I was, looking them up like really manually. But yeah, it at first the pages took me 8 minutes, and then it took me like 6 minutes, and then 4 minutes, and you just got faster over time. Yeah. If that interests anyone, I've written up how I did it. andymorgan.com/Japanese. I just wrote up what I learned from that.
Okay. Yeah, very cool. I tried that. The Hayseek method was probably 15 years ago. But I think I got like halfway through. I actually wrote out like cards for each one. I probably got through the first half, and then it just got a little bit too much. And I think I was also concurrently trying to study for the JLPT level 2, and so that sort of system of trying to memorize all the kanji wasn't really conducive with trying to understand half and then all the other grammar. But I definitely think for someone who's really focused on learning all the kanji, it's a very sort of common sense method that makes sense for the foreign brain.
Yeah. I think for us, like you can't go through that brute force method and expect to be fluent in any reasonable amount of time. You have to use tricks, and one of those tricks is you can reorder them, and you can use stories.
Yep.
And there are communities that share their stories that help it stick in the mind. And if you decide that you're going for fluency from the start, if you decide, right, I'm going for fluency here, I'm not going for like level 4 or 3 or 2 or 1 or whatever it is, you're going for fluency. It's like, right, okay, well, what's the best way to get there? And then it's right, okay, well, learn the kanji, then do this, then do that. And that's kind of the fastest path to get there. And it'll take you a year of maybe 2-3 hours a day. And obviously, if you've only got an hour and a half a day, then extend that and make it 2 years, right? Perhaps a little bit longer. But if you decide from the start that you're after fluency and you actually know that method exists, then that's what I'd recommend people go for. But that's not because I have a particularly great brain. It was just it's just a system. Just a system. Yeah, I didn't want to buy that whole bar shots. Exactly. Yeah.
So then how did you make that transition into fitness? How did that all start?
So I was training. I was doing the karate twice a week. I got into Aikido because Aikido is what Steven Seagal does, if anyone's wondering. The distance will be, the distance in Aikido is similar to that of karate. So everyone's probably familiar with Jiu-Jitsu or Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and how the fighting distance between opponents is very close. So you're grappling basically. Whereas with karate or Aikido, the distance is effectively striking distance, right? And so Aikido is all about the movements that you can utilize from that distance. So similar, what would Jiu-Jitsu look like if it were from a further distance? People describe it as using the opponent's energy against them. You can think of it as being a lot of joint locks and throws, using the joints, using momentum of the opponent against them, as well as there was a lot of, in our school, striking to the chin to push people over that way, and then defending against one of basically 4 patterns of knife attacks, which wouldn't be particularly useful, but it comes from kendo. So I was doing that. I was doing Aikido. I was doing karate. I was doing that maybe 9 sessions a week. I was traveling in India. I was visiting a friend who I lived with for those 3 months back in 2003, Vinay, and I decided to go just on a bit of solo travels while I was there for a week. I went down to Goa. I remember I was chatting with this girl, plucked up the courage to chat with this girl on the beach, and you get chatting, and what do you do? Why you live in Japan? Well, so I mentioned the martial arts, and she's like, "Oh, you don't look like you train as much as you do, right?" It's like, oh shit. But she was right. It was a fair comment. And then I had the maturity to have the maturity, or was I insecure? Maybe it was, I had enough insecurity and maturity to decide, okay, well, what I'm doing is not working here. If I'm looking at it from a physique perspective, what am I doing wrong? So I was still hitting the gym as well. So you can imagine my days were racing from school, getting all my laundry done, right? training, getting my laundry done, slamming protein shakes. And so I started looking into nutrition a bit more seriously. I got kind of ripped off by the supplement industry because, of course, as we all did, right? Hey, bodybuilding.com that sells supplements wasn't the best place to get nutrition advice. Shock horror. Right? And then I kind of found out after a few years of just wasting a lot of money, that I didn't need to do that. And at that time, I was training in a very serious bodybuilding gym in Osaka, down in close to Shin Imamiya in Nishinari-ku, which is the poorest ku in Kansai, I think. Poorest area in Osaka, and all blue collar guys. They haven't got a lot of money to waste on supplements, but they all are, and that just kind of really pissed me off. And so I started writing summary thoughts of mine in English to then translate them into Japanese. I put them up on a blog because I wanted to share and I wanted to help them. I also had this idea that I could perhaps be a personal trainer and switch out from English teaching, that I could price myself at a higher price point than average. And the reason being that I had access to a better level of information because the language wasn't a barrier.
Yeah.
But because of that,
to switch from reading bodybuilding.com to going to T-Nation.
But certainly better websites. T-Nation, for anyone listening, definitely don't go there because again they make money from supplements. But
they do.
But yeah, it was just wanting to help, and then of course the articles that I translated myself, they were terrible, and I got professional help in the end. So I had those translated professionally, but again, nobody really cared. But of the English readers, someone asked me in the comments of one of my articles, hey, how much is your online coaching? And so I was like, oh, well, Phil, online coaching, yeah, happy to have a conversation with you about it. Do you mind if I send you an email? And he's like, yeah, this is all in the comments. If you go through the website, you'll find that somewhere.
Still
in the comments. Yeah, it's still there. I've got about 20,000 comments across all the articles on the website now. Yeah, this is way back. This would be like June or July 2011.
Okay.
Anyway, I sent him an email. It's like, oh, Phil, so look, thank you for the comment. My 12-week coaching package includes this, and this. It costs $899. And he's like, great, sign me up, send me a link to pay. And I was like, whoa. So now I'm Googling how to accept money in Japan from America. He was from the Bay Area. God bless the Bay Area people who are always first onto things.
Yeah.
I know online coaching is standard now, but it certainly wasn't back in 2011.
Yeah.
PayPal comes up. I create a PayPal account. I send him a link, and it just kind of snowballs from there. I start talking about how I'm working with Phil. More people apply for coaching. I decided it would be a good idea to create a coaching tab in my menu and make a page talking about the coaching. Yeah. And then, I just started talking about coaching, talking about the clients, talking about what I was doing, and it snowballed from there.
Yeah. And then how long did it sort of take for you to make that transition to doing that full time?
So it was a strange one. So there's, at what point is the money sufficient? And then there is, at what point is the money consistent and sufficient? And then there's, at what point is the money consistent and sufficient to cover my needs and sufficient to cover my worry that this isn't just a fad, it is going to continue and I can quit my very safe government job.
Yeah, sure.
Right. So it was something like first month I made, these are ballpark figures, maybe $3,000, which is covering my English. That was my English teaching job. I'm thinking in US dollars right now. Then maybe the next month it was 7. Then maybe the next month 11. Then I think October it went down to 8. Then November it was like 18. December like 23. And then January, like everyone wants to get fit in January, so up from that. And I then kind of had a decision, right? Do I, because I need to let the Board of Education know if I'm going to quit around at the end of January. And I made a decision that I would quit and go all in then. I was fortunate that I had a job that enabled me enough free time where I could do that on the side.
Yep.
And yeah, I've just kind of continued doing that from there. I hired a guy called Ken Yao, who's still working for me full time as a translator. He's way more than that, but he's an absolutely excellent translator. That's what he specializes in and has been to school for. He has built out the Japanese website, athletebody.jp.
Yep.
And that website, we lost money for years and years.
Yeah.
Because we just didn't make the coaching sales there. Online coaching was just too new.
Yeah.
But I felt like it was the right thing to do because I felt like this is my way to make a difference. I'm one of many people in the English speaking industry who's putting out good information, but in Japan, I was rarer because I had not only the intent but the ability, because I could walk into worlds and I had access to that other information. So it's not only being able to speak English, but it's also being an industry specialist.
Yep.
And it's being able to distinguish between the pseudoscience and the real science, which is a very, which shouldn't be taken for granted, right? There's a lot of well-meaning people that put out a lot of nonsense because they're parroting pseudoscience without realizing it.
Yeah, sure.
So yeah, and now that website, athletebody.jp, does well. I bought ripbody.com. It was ripbody.jp, and yeah, I've just been growing those two businesses. And the books that you see behind me, I wrote those with Dr. Eric Helms.
Yeah,
they're called the Muscle and Strength Pyramids. And we released the nutrition version of that in Japanese August last year.
Yep.
Managed to get to #1 a couple of times on Amazon. That's all book charts. Wow. So pretty pleased with that. It was only for a couple of days, one day and then one day. But yeah, I'm excited to see how the training book does because that will be released next month, towards the end of next month. So that was just to date this. We're now August 2022, and that's going to be September 2022.
So fantastic. Yeah. And so how did the book project start? How did you develop that relationship with Eric and what sort of, how did that sort of come about?
Yeah. So, like for anyone who's been skiing, this is kind of the image that I want you to have in your head of me. It's like, when you're really new and you start actually moving and then you realize that you can't stop and you have a choice. You can crash and face plant, or you can try your best to just stay upright by absolutely any means possible. So this is essentially me. I've just been falling forwards, sliding down a hill, trying not to crash for a decade now. And so none of this stuff I knew. It's all a case of just figuring it out. So it might sound smart in hindsight, but it is just a case of, just trying to figure it out as I go along. So I made a huge mistake of not starting an email list until 2015. So I'd had my website since 2011. I was the third most popular website in the world for intermittent fasting as a search term for, I think, 2012, 13, 14. And I wasn't collecting email addresses. So that's literally millions of dollars, like of potential lost revenue there. And I was because I was talking about specifically something called lean gains, which was Martin Berkhan's system of intermittent fasting, which essentially you can think of as skip breakfast, have a big lunch, have a big dinner, train hard and heavy, not too many times a week, so maybe 3 times a week. There's a little more to it than that. But effectively it's like, look, just keep things simple. You don't have to go down this route of eat 25 grams of protein every 6 hours and take all these supplements and blah, 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 right? It was kind of the antithesis to that. Now, not that there's anything particularly magic about skipping breakfast, I should add there before moving on. Now, I was at a conference in the States, and buddy Sol, who runs examine.com, which I know you know, Sam, but for those listening, if you are ever wondering about the efficacy of any specific supplement or compound for whatever it is you are struggling with, just type that in. Go to examine.com, type that in. Sol and his team, they put together like they don't sell anything other than a membership to their database, but you can get most of the information for free. And they summarize the research on this, on all kinds of things relating to fitness and health. So let's say you want to look for ashwagandha or CBD or creatine, you can go to examine.com and yeah, it's great. Anyway, so Sol was giving a talk. He was talking about the importance of an email list. I was like, okay, got it. 2 weeks later, we're in Birmingham. There's another conference, big one. And Sol's giving another talk on stage. And I knew it was the same one, but I was like, I need to go and listen to this again because I'd already had pages of notes. Because if I'd go and I need to do this. So I need to just have it hammered into me. So I skipped out of the one that I was supposed to be in, and I went and saw Sol's semi-main stage talk. And I was like, right, okay, I'm going to do that. And I was like, right, okay. So I started my email list. I use ConvertKit, which is very simple software for anyone that's interested. And I was then like, right, how am I going to get people onto my email list? Because if you say, subscribe to my newsletter, it's just not very exciting, right? Yeah. So there's a concept called an ethical bribe. And my ethical bribe was going to be an ebook. It still is, actually. It's an ebook and then an email course. And I decided that I would take the articles talking about nutrition setup, which were at that time and still are in a frame of Dr. Eric Helms's pyramid of importance, with calories as the fundamental base layer and along with adherence to a diet, and then macros, and then micronutrition and water, and then timing kind of, as you ascend, the level of relevancy and efficacy is far, far less. And then the last thing to ever consider is supplementation, right? Because it has the least impact. So I had a series of articles talking about that. I decided to wrap them up into an ebook and put that on my email grab. And that went really well. And tens of thousands of people kindly downloaded that, and they were on the email list. And then I was like, well, okay, what's the next step? And, marketing wisdom is, right, you've got them on your email list. You've got them with an ebook. Sell them something. And I was like, well, what can I sell? And at that time, I was having a break from coaching. So I was like, well, how about I just make a book talking about how I coach? What are my decision-making frameworks? How do I assess a client's progress? What am I looking for when I'm looking at their weight and their scale weight trends, their body measurement trends, how that's affected by their sleep, stress, fatigue, hunger scores, what I'm looking for in their training, and how those all interplay, and then how I adjust things to get them to a pre-agreed goal. So I put that into a book, and then I sold that to my list. And then it was so we're talking like May. It was April, Sol's first conference, start of May, Sol's second conference, had an email list by the end of May, had a book by the start of June, because we're just building it out I was just using the pieces from my blog, putting them into an ebook format and tarting it up a bit. Then I had my own book out by August, and then within a month, Dr. Eric Helms had turned around to me and said, Andy, I would love to make a book based on my YouTube nutrition pyramid that I know you've made blog post articles on. You know about ebooks and selling them. How about we team up and we work with my colleague Andrea Valdez, and the three of us, we write ebook versions of my YouTube series, and we can do one on training as well. And like Eric big name in our industry, in the niche of our industry. And I was like honored, and I was like, wow. And obviously I jumped on it. I didn't point out that actually I don't really know anything. I only learned about this a couple of months ago. Actually, you know what? Knowing me, I probably said exactly that. But to him, I was a guy who was trusted, had a track record, and clearly knew more. And that was enough. So I decided to take another step and keep tumbling forwards as well. And I helped make those into ebooks. And those ebooks have done really, really well. We're now on the second editions. We'll probably do a third at some point. Eric told me that he's getting close to the point where he just can't tolerate the second editions anymore. Yep. He said there's nothing in there that's particularly bad, but he just wants to update them.
Yeah.
But yeah, they've done really well. We've got them in, I think, 5 or 6 languages now.
Amazing.
I think we sold 60, 70,000 copies worldwide, which for the niche that we're in, that's pretty good. Yeah.
And then the print version. So you then decided to go to a hardcover or an actual print version of the book. What prompted you to do that in addition to the ebook?
Yeah. So for the first edition of the books, which were released at the end of 2015, so we worked on them from late August through to December. Those were only ebooks. We wanted to do ebooks because it's less messy. It's pure profit. But there was clearly demand for physical books. So when the second editions came around, it was, I think, the start of 2019. We decided, we did the ebooks first, and we gave them out to all of our first edition buyers for free. That was part of the promise. And we then thought, hey, well, let's use Amazon's platform. It's called Kindle Direct Publishing, but it's not Kindle. That's their publishing platform. Let's use Amazon's platform to get these books out. Now, the reason I chose Kindle, I mean, I've had hours and hours long conversations with different authors about this, but the reason that we ended up choosing that is because we have a very diverse, internationally diverse audience. And although we know that getting books printed ourselves and shipping them to Amazon warehouses would be the way of maximizing profits, it would also create massive customer support issues, because you'd have people in like Australia or Europe or wherever saying, hey, are these available here? Or, oh, I didn't get these shipped yet, or whatever. So it's like, right, if we put them on Amazon, people are just going to bother Amazon and their customer service. Amazon will take care of the customer service, shipping, fulfillment, everything. So that's why we used Amazon there. And I can talk in excruciating depth about that. I won't, don't worry. And for our Japanese translations of the books, they are physical. For those not watching the video, which I assume most people won't, you can hear that it is a hardback. They're really nice quality, actually. We decided to go to a printer in Japan. We decided to ship them to Amazon, get them printed from a printer, negotiated with them, get them shipped to Amazon, and then they then ship them around their fulfillment centers within Japan. And then we get a higher cut of the profits. Now, it's not, I think at the price of the book and the cost, I think we end up with about 60% of the cover price. Versus maybe 45% if we were to go with Amazon's print on demand. But we wanted them to be hardback, and we wanted to eke out more profit from them. I think Amazon has just started rolling out hardback now. So this may be something, if people are interested in this, to look into. But yeah, that's why we decided to do that. And because it was just Japan, we could go to a printer and ship them here. We didn't have that problem of Japanese people kind of emailing in saying, Japanese people in Canada emailing in saying, hey, when are you going to have these books in Canada's Amazon? Like, that just doesn't exist, right?
Yeah, sure.
I'll get them from Amazon Japan. So yeah.
Very cool. And yes, you can see them behind you there, the English versions.
There's a problem, sir. If you didn't have that background there, you would see you've got all of your degrees behind you. I'm not sure if you're sat in your office right now or you're sat at home. But like, Yeah, you're. I don't have. Are you actually on the toilet?
No, this is in my office. Yes.
Okay, so I don't have that. Like Eric's a smart one. He's got like his degrees. In fact, in his office, whenever he does a podcast, he's got his wife's degrees there as well and a PhD. So like it looks like he's properly credentialed up. I don't have that, so this is just to make me look credible because
Yes.
I'm not.
But you've also got you know, a lot of other titles on that bookshelf that the fact that you may have read them makes it extremely credible as well, especially one to the right there. I think you might need to move your body a little bit to the science of
Striking.
Is it? Wow.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. Which everybody obviously should go out and buy. Now, even if you don't read it, it is a very good self-defense object at 700 something pages. Being hardcover, you will be able to knock someone's teeth out if they want to look at you wrong.
Now that Amazon started doing hardcover, I'm going to jump on and see if I can do that as an option because it sounds very attractive. Very cool. And so I guess doing what you're doing, you've been doing essentially online business for the best part of a decade or more now. What have been some of the challenges that you faced with that? What are some of the advantages? What do you sort of like about the online lifestyle? I know when I first met you moved from Osaka, and I was like, the average person that moves from Osaka to Tokyo, or that I'll meet would be, my company sent me here. With you, it was like, because I can live in Tokyo, I can live in San Francisco, I can go back and live in India if I wanted. Obviously, it gives you a lot of freedom. What are some of the other things that you've really thrived upon? Working in the way that you do.
Sure. So I wanted to grow the business, the Japanese business. I think that's where I can have the outsized impact. Again, I still am one of many people putting out good information in the English speaking world. And we are now one of many people, many companies, many individuals that are putting out great information in Japan in Japanese, which is great. The industry has come a long way, but we are still a relatively large voice within a relatively small industry, and we can have a fairly big impact. And I felt that it's right for me to pursue that. If I think not in terms of financial interest, but what is the impact that I can leave on the world? Because we're all going to be dust, right? What's the impact that I can leave on these other people who are going to be dust in like 50, 100 years anyway? Like, where can I make the biggest difference? And that's this. It's the Japanese website. So when I was fed up of Osaka, I was like, right, I need to make a move. I did consider, say, San Francisco or wherever, because I do want to optimize for interesting people and conversations. But at the same time, if I do that, then my passion for Japan, the Japanese website, will die. Most likely, it would be harder to keep that alive. So, the decision was made, right, move to Tokyo. And then I got myself a Tokyo American Club membership, because that puts me around all, interesting, inspiring people. And then that led me to you, because everybody goes to see you when they're injured themselves, right? It's like, who did I see? Sam. Like, I heard that a few times. I was like, boom, Sam it is. And yeah, that's why Tokyo. And then online, so there are two parts of this question. There's what does online afford me that in person doesn't, and then there's what have been some of the challenges what are some of the challenges online, or what are some of the new challenges online over the last decades?
I guess both, and even sort of the last 2 years. What's sort of the pandemic meant to the business, and how has that sort of changed things?
Sure. So if we do say if we get kind of super businessy here, the great thing about online coaching, if you can do it and pull it off, is that it enables you to maximize the time for money. It is still time for money, but it enables you to really make that super efficient. Whereas with one-on-one in-person stuff, people are usually they're buying your time for 45 minutes or 1 hour. Whereas now I'm able to package my knowledge into an outcome. So I can price based on value that someone is getting, rather than pricing myself based on time, because I'm seen as a commodity in my industry and fairly replaceable. Oh, Sam costs this much and he's a physio. Well, why don't I see this other guy who's cheaper and he's a physio, because people aren't able to kind of distinguish between the difference. Now, that does exist with online, but I was able to create a website that was popular enough where people wanted me and they didn't see me as easily replaceable by others.
Yeah.
So making a website, writing articles that were super, super helpful, that made the client the hero, made them too good to not share with friends. That has done me well for constantly keeping coaching applications coming in. And then from there, it's a case of, right, well, the more efficient I can make this, the more money I can earn. So how can I make this super efficient? So then I've gone down a rabbit hole of templating, canned responses, which, I've been doing this 10, 11 years now. What are the questions that I'm commonly asked? Well, I've got something like 200 canned responses that I can use. And while I'll never just send a client a simple canned response and that's it. Like if someone, as I'm going through their update, let's say they're having issues with sleep, it's like, oh, well, I've written out this checklist, and there's a checklist with a few code types on my keyboard. Bam, Text Expander is a tool that does this.
Yep.
I use Superhuman email software, and it expands into my checklist for sleep. The client is delighted. I don't have to rely on memory. I can always keep going back and improving that as I'm learning over time. And so it's just a win from all sides. It's very efficient. And so that's great as well. And the other way that I've optimized it, which is fairly unusual in my industry, which many people, they have unfortunately commoditized themselves and they say, hey, text me anytime. Here's my WhatsApp. We can have a call once a week. And, that is, that doesn't scale. That's the sign of a newbie in my mind. I've kind of gone to the other side, whereas you email me from a computer, you'll check in every couple of weeks. Your check-in will be on a Saturday. The deadline to check in is Saturday by midnight. If that's difficult, the Friday before is fine. If you're late, please just check in 2 weeks later with your data. It's not a problem. Stuff happens, but don't be late. And then please expect me to shuffle my schedule around. And I kind of make that into a joke, whereas like, look, if the Queen calls me and asks me to go over for afternoon tea on a Monday, I will say, no, I'm sorry, I'm dedicated to my online coaching clients on a Monday. Would we be able to do Wednesday, Your Highness, right? Just be firm with the boundaries. And then that's how I've managed to make it efficient. So my Mondays are packed with client work and my Tuesday morning with client work. And then after that, it's mainly about writing articles or Japanese business stuff or social media stuff. The challenge for me as a writer has been to shift myself to more and more social media type content and more video content. The reason being is that people are reading blogs, long form content less, and they're watching more. And people are very often, they are being passively educated rather than having active search intent. Passive education in this sense means stumbling across content on Instagram. They'll follow a few random fitness people or hashtags, and then they'll, just add that over time and think they're getting an education that way. Whereas previously there was a lot of search intent. There still is, but search intent meaning people are searching in Google for, how can I find maintenance calories after I finish dieting so that I can maintain my level of leanness? That might be something that people look for. How much protein should I eat while in a diet phase versus a bulk phase? I might, appear for that. Should I cut or bulk? My website might appear for that. All these kind of like fairly geeky, nuanced topics. I'll come up in Google for that. But more and more people are shifting to social. So it's a question of, how can I stay relevant? And the way that I am attempting to do that is a constant challenge, but that is by seeing video creation as a a twofold process. One is it is a problem of writing. It is not a problem of creating videos.
Mm.
This is all kind of like self-talk to get myself over the mental hurdle here. The problem of writing, the reason I phrase it like that is because videos are scripted and editing is something that I can do separately or have somebody do for me. Adding subtitles is something that I can do separately or have someone do for me. What is the video? The video is the content. The content can be scripted, and then I can just look away from the camera, read the section of my script, that sentence, read it back into the camera with emotion, and just have hard cuts throughout the video. So I reframed it in my mind as that is now a writing problem. And then the second thing is, because things need to be short and snappy, it's a problem of simplifying to the simplifying as much as possible without compromising the quality of the information that you're giving out, which is very difficult because context is everything. And so that has been a challenge, but I'm quite enjoying that challenge, actually. The good thing about social media, especially, is that the feedback is instant. People, if they're pissed off with what you've said, or they're confused about what you said, they'll immediately write in the comments.
Yeah.
People joke that the fastest way to get an answer on Twitter is not to ask it, but just to write something wrong, and then people will tell you. But yeah, that's kind of where it is for me and us, I would say, in general as content creators.
Yeah, very cool. And then I guess just sort of starting to wind up a bit, what does the future hold for Andy Morgan, for Ritbody? What are the plans for the future? What's in the works at the moment?
Yeah, world domination, mate, obviously. So I don't know, it's all speculative, but for Japan, we will have our training book come out. The nutrition book, that's the muscle and strength nutrition pyramid, or Nikitai Kaizo no Piramido Eiyo Hen, and that'll be training hen. If you want to put that into Amazon. The training book is considered the best. It's like the nutrition Bible here now, which is wonderful. The training book may go on to be considered the same. This puts us in a very good position from a credibility point of view. And then it's a case of, okay, well, how are we going to use that, optimize that? And how are we going to use that credibility to create some form of monthly recurring revenue products? One idea I have is a paid newsletter where we do research reviews. So this is kind of leaning into our geek hardcore audience. So educating the professionals here. Why would we do that? Because if we educate the professionals, then we have an outsized impact on everybody else.
Absolutely.
And so we could potentially charge, I don't know, 1,000 yen, 2,000 yen per month for that, and put out 2 pieces of content over our newsletter each month. Just an idea. But then we get ourselves on the treadmill of content creation, or my guys do. But the good side is that you do one piece, but that can scale to an infinite number of people.
Yeah.
The other potential thing that's being considered is an app, kind of like MyFitnessPal, or the better version of MyFitnessPal would be MacroFactor, which is created by a mutual friend of ours, Greg Knuckles, of StrongerByScience.com. MacroFactor app, if you're interested in that, it's how to log your calories and macros. But a Japanese version of that that's localized to the current, it's localized for Japan. That could be potentially big, and this would be going mass market there. And I'm working with a friend on a prototype for that right now, actually. But yeah, it's not decided. If someone has an idea for what monthly recurring product we could do that isn't tied in as time for money, like our one-on-one coaching is, which has its limitations, then I'm all ears. But it has to be with it has to have all of our values. It has to still maintain all of our values, right? So it cannot be anything supplement related. It cannot be like one specific brand of equipment and being sponsored by them, or we got to think bigger than that, you know. We can't compromise our values on that. So yeah. And then as far as the English site, ripbody.com, I've hired a couple of coaches this year, and it's just a case of building out that business. So getting more well known, and getting enough clients so that I fill them up, and just building that coaching business from there. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So if people are interested in following you, we'll obviously put all your details in the show notes, but maybe if you can just give us again the website details in English and Japanese, and which social media platforms are you most active on? It's Instagram and Twitter. Is that where people can find you?
Yeah. So for English, it's ripbody.com, and Instagram, it's Andy_ripbody. And then on Japanese, for the Japanese, it'll be athletebody.jp, and that one most active on Twitter, and that would be Andy Athlete Body. I think just Andy Athlete Body. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, it's amazing what you've done, how you built the business up. I think it's a really fascinating story, and appreciate you coming on and telling us all about it. And I think that perhaps in the future we might have another episode where we could just sort of geek out and talk a little bit more about training related stuff. So if there's any listeners that do have training related and nutrition related questions for Andy, then please let me know, and we can get him on soon and have a bit more of a training chat.
Thank you, Sam. I appreciate your time, and thank you guys for listening.